I'm Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns, our managing editor, all the way out there in the nation's capital on another kind of cloudy day here in the sunny, not so sunny Okanagan. And snowy there, I imagine. No snow here, though. Not on the ground here, that's for sure.
Very snowy. And there's just been a warning that it's going to go down to minus 38 or something like that. So good fun.
Sucks to be you, not minus 38 here. But we got lots to talk about. I mean, we barely got time to get ready here. We were actually a couple minutes late on the Really Big Show. Please like, share, subscribe, and make sure you share this on Facebook. We got some Facebook news later as well. But let's hit the headlines first as I talk 100 miles an hour. Bessent challenges Carney to put his ego aside and work for Canada. EB now recognizes that he has no say on the pipeline other than being a boo bird. Trump is on the campaign trail. Looking more and more like Carney is alone in his new world order. The premiers and the PM meet, and EB now accuses Albertans of treason. There's a big one. Alberta looking at all forms of energy. Flip-flop forward. Flip-flop forward. That's a tongue twister there. Flip-flop forward pleads with Quebecers. What a mess. Minnesota to join Canada? There's a question mark. CBC goes all in on propaganda. Sounds like they really want to have Canada's only source of information. Canada needs a deal as our outlook continues to look grim at best. As an economist, Carney sure gets a lot wrong. Lots of nation-building touts, but lots of buts. Gerald Butts. House votes down pro-investor conservative motion. Online News Act, now okay for media to talk about it. CPP walks away from net zero. Climate agenda, still liberal talking points though. NDP has lost all its credibility, both nationally and provincially. Fears what they use on the weak minds. Media campaigning for Ford to head Conservatives in Canada. Auto sector under pressure in Canada as Liberals make poor decisions driven by failed policies and ego. Layoffs coming for government employees. Responsible spending not happening with federal managers. Tech talk. EB has quite a mess and still virtue signaling. Trump on the campaign trail. I already said that. And the mayor of New York says it's a mother of all fiscal crises. Imagine that. All that and more yet, and more. Unbelievable and more. We actually put chapters into our last couple of days. We put chapters into our videos because we know that our news show here is a couple hours long, and some people love it and they're here for the whole thing. Some people would like us to put chapters in, so we listen as always. We're always listening and taking in your feedback, and we appreciate your comments, your shares, and everything. And our goal for this month was 1 million for January, and we're going to hit 1.5 million. So that's amazing. So we thank you for all for being here, for helping us get this out there. And if you could help us more, we need to fight the misinformation, disinformation that's put out by the propaganda outlets. We need to get the truth out there. That's the only way Canada is going to get better. Ian and I are working hard along with our team in the background to make Canada a better place by highlighting the fraud, waste, corruption, abuse, and the stories that need to be told. But we'll kick it off first with Scott Bessent here. He says, this is on the CBC website, that Carney needs to stop virtue signaling and just work for Canada. Here's a clip here. Brian Lilly reposted this from CNBC. Let's listen in.
What about Canada? We've got a bit of a rift there lately, and there's different accounts between you and Prime Minister Mark Carney about that call this week post-Davos with President Trump. He says that he dug in and reinforced the message. You said that he walked it back.
I was on the call. Prime Minister Carney, in my investment career, I've seen what happens when a technocrat tries to pivot and become a politician. It never really works out well. So I would just encourage Prime Minister Carney to do what he thinks is best for the Canadian people, not his own virtue signaling, because we do have a USMCA negotiation coming up, and he rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump message, and that's not a great place to be when you're negotiating with an economy that is multiple larger than you are and your biggest trading partner. In the end, I think we will end up in a good place, may not be a straight line.
Are you saying that they will face consequences in these trade negotiations, reopening the USMCA?
I am saying that I would not pick a fight going into USMCA to score some cheap political points. Either you are working for your own political career or you're working for the Canadian people.
And even when we listened to Mark Carney talk yesterday, when he was asked by CBC there, I mean, it sounded like Carney was kind of like just said it in different words, and that's exactly what Bessent's saying there. He kind of used like techno talk to kind of like go around it, and saying, "Oh no, this new world order, you're all in this new world order." I mean, we've seen it before, so that's more like the truth right there, and that even comes from Sam Cooper that said that too. Looking at the lead up to this call, is there any reason to doubt Carney was doing private damage control? And he even says that the Americans, you said this a long time ago, that Carney does a lot of this and the Americans know he's doing it, and they're just like, who cares as long as the deal is getting done. But Carney does a lot of this to drive fear and win public support here in Canada.
It's a truism, isn't it? As we've said many times, the worse the relationship is between Canada and the United States, the more popular the Liberal Party is. That's almost like a mathematical formula at this point. You can build cities based on that formula now. So, yeah, the incentive structure is all wrong. And so many of our institutions, mainly the media, are very happy to play along because they despise Donald Trump as well and have a general sort of sympathy with the Liberal Party and with Mark Carney. So here we find ourselves in this bizarre situation. But I do have to say, Bessent saying technocrats don't often succeed going into politics. Is he not a technocrat? I think he is, isn't he? Pretty much like a financial wizard sort of guy, isn't he, Bessent? Kind of like a technocrat, so a bit of a strange thing to say. And I'd also say he recognizes, he says, Mark Carney won the election, won a minority based on antagonizing the United States. Yeah, that's true, but why did your boss play along? Why did your boss say that he really didn't like Pierre Poilievre and he wanted Mark Carney to win? Why did he completely leave him alone? He basically stepped away and he just let Carney relentlessly attack Trump in America. The Americans, and I mean Donald Trump and his team, played along there, and they still haven't really explained themselves.
That's funny. Somebody on here, Tony, says there's a CDS now instead of a TDS, Carney derangement syndrome. No, I mean, our job is to hold power to account. Guess who's in power, Tony? I looked last time. It looks like the Liberals for the past decade. That's who needs to be held to account.
Is Carney interesting enough to have his own derangement syndrome? To have a derangement syndrome named after you, you've got to be like a really interesting person that completely divides the planet. And I'm sorry to say, that's not Mark Carney. He's just not interesting enough.
Here's your favorite, Francois Philippe Champagne, when he's asked about the New World Order there. Carney starting to look like he's all alone in here, as even Keir Starmer's backed away from those comments.
Keir Starmer has rejected Carney's Davos speech. What is your reaction to that?
I would say the Prime Minister said out loud what a lot of people thought privately. Well, I can't speak for him, but I would say the vision that he presented is one that resonated. And I can tell you Canada is really a country where people look up now for investments, for our values resonate, and certainly we're happy to work with all our partners.
Did he take that poll again? Did he ask himself? Is that where he got that information from again? When Francois Philippe Champagne, he says he talked to people, and he talked to himself again. That's also now Christine Lagarde that has walked it back and said that she didn't agree with what he said. That's the European Union bank.
Because they don't want to antagonize China or the US, obviously, which is what that speech did. But I also just have to say, I've got to say it again. I got to say it as loudly, I suppose, and as often as I can. That speech is being wildly overpraised in this country. Anyway, I mean, there's some quite sensible appraisals of it happening elsewhere in Britain, in Europe. in the United States, but not in this country. Every single person that opens their mouth about this, anybody in a position of authority in the media, in politics, whatever, says that it was this marvelous, eloquent speech that was so serious. It was a real hardcore intellectual speech. It was a mess. And that's probably why one of the reasons that Keir Starmer and the British government aren't going along with it, because it wasn't coherent. It didn't express anything. It didn't say anything about the world. It just said the US world order doesn't work anymore. We don't have to pretend it does work. And instead, middle powers, which Canada is not, should all join together, and somehow there'll be rainbows and things will make sense. That's not really coherent. And his actions aren't coherent either. What he's doing, like going to China, as he did, like, what was it, a week before that? Or he went to China after, actually, didn't he? Oh, I can't remember.
After,
no, it was before. He just got back from Beijing. That was it. Like, his actions are not consistent with what he was trying to get across there in this worldview. And none of it really makes sense. And I would also say the British probably don't like the idea that they're a middle power. Usually Britain is categorized as a great power, believe it or not. Very hard to imagine how that can be sustained, but I suppose they do have a navy and they do have nuclear weapons, which is usually sort of great power things. But I mean, the British probably balk at that a bit, this idea that like Britain and Canada are equivalents.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say,
so,
for sure, the UK is a legit middle power, and they typically go hand in hand with the Americans when they do military actions in the world, and they've done that over and over again. And they have stuff to contribute when there is operations. I mean, they contributed in the last one in Iran and stuff like that. And they have an aircraft carrier, and they have an actual military, where Canada has elected its military forever. So I would agree with you that when he lumps himself in with the UK, and even France for that matter, Canada is lacking in the middle power. If it's in the middle power, it'll be at the bottom of the rung in this middle power Lord of the Rings thing. But nobody wants to play along because, like I said, the Americans and the English have been supporting each other in military operations for a long, long time.
But it's also like foreign affairs. There are no principles in foreign affairs, really. It's all self-interest at the end of the day. Even at the height of like post-Cold War loony bin foreign affairs, it was still basically self-interest. And the British aren't gonna get into bed with Mark Carney and the Liberals and Canada at the expense of their relationship with either China or the United States, because to do so would be against the interests of the British people. Although he does refer to himself as a British pragmatist applying common sense. That's what Keir Starmer says of himself. The man who is inexplicably giving away some of the most precious real estate in the Indian Ocean, the Chagos Islands, giving it away to a country that has no legitimate claim to it, never owned it, never possessed it, has no real relationship with it, in Mauritius. And not only are they going to give it to them, but they're also going to pay them £100 million a year to give it to them. Is that British pragmatism? I don't think so. That doesn't sound like what I understand to be British pragmatism anyway.
Global Traveler points out that Poilievre went negative on Trump first, but we have to remember that Mark Carney had a relationship with Donald Trump. They had business dealings prior to him taking a run at the president of the United States. They know each other, and Pierre Poilievre would be on the outside of that relationship. I don't know if he knows or has he met Trump? Maybe he has. I'm not sure, but they definitely don't have any.
Not to my knowledge. But he said terrible things about Pierre Poilievre, and then he said neutral things, let's say, and sort of positive things about the Liberal Party, about Mark Carney, which if you contrast what he said about Mark Carney with what he said about Pierre Poilievre and what he said about Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland and all the rest of it, his neutrality is almost like a glorious compliment, isn't it? He left him alone. He's only just the other day called him Governor Carney. That's new, that's a new development. He went really easy on Carney. And then when they met, of course, he was all over him. Couldn't stop talking about how great he was.
Thank you to Tucker there for that contribution. And then also thank you to Gary for that contribution. We really appreciate people when they support independent media. This is going to be a year of independent media here in 2026, where we got to break through the noise of the propaganda. We're going to show you a lot of that propaganda here as we move through the news. load today. Here's Scott Moe. Remember we played that clip of Scott Moe in China there when Carney said the first time he said that New World Order. That was before he went to Davos there, and Scott Moe just perked right up there, just like what's going on here. So Vasi Kapelis finally gets to ask him about what he thought of the New World Order. Let's listen in.
The Prime Minister, when he was in Beijing, you were sitting, I think, just a couple of people away from, maybe even right next to him. At one point, kind of remarked about how the progress we have made, he said, in the partnership with China, as he referenced in that meeting, with the highest levels of the Chinese Communist Party, sets us up well for the New World Order. Did you agree with that assessment?
That's not a statement I would use, but in saying, because it's interpreted in many different ways by many different people.
That's good enough.
However, I would
say that's all we wanted out of that. Because you could see it in his face when he was like, and Carney said New World Order, and Scott Moe's just like, what? This isn't going to fly in Saskatchewan.
Well, it was literally like when you slam the door or something and your cat is asleep or your dog's asleep. It was, oh. It was like he was really shocked. But I just want to respond to our chum global traveler here, who says, if Trump was so hated, how did Trump saying nice things about Carney help Carney to win? And I would say it really helped in the sense that it sort of confirmed, it backed up Carney's claim that he could do business with Trump. He could do the deal with Trump. Whereas Justin Trudeau had been nothing but humiliated and just like kicked around like a smelly dog and just like teased and despised and mocked. Whereas Carney, such a big dog, he was such a mega figure in the world scene that even Donald Trump had to kind of like lay off a bit and take him seriously. And that, I think, so then it got to be unilateral attacks on the United States from Carney and the Liberals. So that got to really like get the blood hot of a lot of the Liberal people, get the elbows hot. But then they could also look at it rationally and say, look, Carney's promised us a deal with Trump, and look how Trump speaks about Carney, if he speaks at all. He says he'd rather work with him. Like on a practical level, he fears Carney or something along those lines, and therefore a deal will happen. Whereas lightweight Pierre Poilievre, even though he's a Trump worshipper, which is what a lot of them are claiming, Trump doesn't even like him. So how are they going to get a deal? So I think that would be my answer to that question, Mr. Traveller.
There was a meeting. The premiers went to Ottawa. Another meeting. What are we now? Are we 11 months into this deal now? 11 months into this new government? Who cares anyway? But another meeting. And another meeting. But and then they had a separate meeting there. Just Daniel Smith, David Eby, and Mark Carney there. Trying to get this pipeline through. And, Daniel Smith said it was a good discussion. Again, I think they had some common ground on LNG, TMX expansion, electricity, but I mean, their stumbling block is still the pipeline, the northern pipeline. And here's David Eby reacting again to the Tidewater pipeline for Alberta.
Yesterday in the House of Commons, the Prime Minister said in very clear terms, he said the Alberta MOU will build a pipeline to Tidewater. Was that the position the Prime Minister adopted in those conversations today, or what did he say about it?
Well, it's certainly very clear to me that this is a project that's being driven by the province of Alberta and the Prime Minister, and our role constitutionally is pretty limited in that. But I will say that there hasn't been any significant update in terms of actually manifesting a pipeline in any significant way, and our position remains the same. There was a meeting with First Nations where the Prime Minister committed that coastal First Nations consent was key to this, and there's a significant amount of work ahead.
Yesterday.
He's walked back his fire and brimstone talk to now recognizing he doesn't really have much to say about it, but he's going to block at any gamut. Later on, he did say that First Nations still don't want it, so he's going to do everything he can to block this. But he's recognizing that he has little. That's been the truth from the get-go. But the media was more than happy to play, and David Eby is more happy than to continue to gaslight Canadians, talking like he had the power to block it.
Well, it's all just so mixed up. It's like so much with Mark Carney and this new government. So little detail, so little adds up, so little makes sense. The reason that we are all looking at David Eby and asking him questions about whether he's going to veto this is because Mark Carney said he has a veto, even though, yeah, we all know constitutionally that he doesn't have a veto. That's not new information. We know that. The problem is the Prime Minister said he has a veto. The Premier of British Columbia has a veto. The First Nations have a veto. Until they don't. I mean, do they? Don't they? Who cares? Mark Carney's not going to tell you. He likes you to be confused. Doesn't like to give you any details. But David Eby, I mean, he just always, you say, yeah, he's not fire and brimstone anymore. He just always seems like disappointed. He's like a tired, disappointed dad talking to his son or something, isn't he? He's like, son, I know you got another F. So he's just so gloomy. He's like low energy and he's low spirits. It seems like he's very unhappy in general. And he's always got kind of like, he's always like downcast, isn't he? He's like, I just think, I know that might sound petty, but I think that's not good. That's not good in a leader. He's one of the most important and powerful people in Canada. And he's just always moping around like a sort of depressed teenager. It's very, very odd attitude. And he also, like, he referred to the meeting with Danielle Smith, that included Danielle Smith. And he said it was borderline polite or something along those lines. Like, what are you talking about, man? Why is he speaking like that? And it's just, he baffles me, David Eby. He gives me the impression that he almost like doesn't want to go on anymore. He's just like had enough. Like, just look at his face there. He's so unhappy all the time. But yeah, anyway, a mystery what he gets up to.
He likes to blame people for everything, and here he goes. Now he's throwing out the treason word. Let's listen to this here.
Now, I understand the desire to hold a referendum, to talk about the issues you want to talk about in Canada. We got free speech, that's important. But to go to a foreign country and to ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there's an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason. It is completely inappropriate to seek to weaken Canada, to seek to go and ask for assistance to break up this country from a foreign power. And with respect, a president who has not been particularly respectful of Canada's sovereignty. I'm going to be raising that issue at this table. I think that while we can respect the right of any Canadian to express themselves, to vote in a referendum, I think we need to draw the line at people seeking the assistance of foreign countries to break up this beautiful land of ours that our forefathers, our foremothers, our parents, our grandparents fought for.
That's good.
I thought our forefathers were evil because they stole land off the Indigenous. But what was that? Was it good? It's good that they fought for it? Sorry, Mr. Eby. You got to be consistent. This is what I mean. I'm talking about Mark Carney. Where is the consistency? Just try. Think. This is what I always say. You got to get this order right. First you think, then you speak. That has to be the order every time. That just makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'd also say, I have to chuck this in. Do you think David Eby would say the same thing about Quebec separatists? You know, in the past, they've had, I don't know what word to use, but pretty sketchy relationships, particularly with French. The famous episode when Charles de Gaulle came, I think, to Montreal and started singing about Vive Quebec and things like that. Like, were they traitors? Was that treason? Would he ever say that about them? I do wonder. But again, there's often this kind of paternalistic attitude from people in British Columbia, especially Vancouver. There's a patronizing paternalistic attitude to people from Alberta. And I think that's what you're seeing there. He's looking down his nose at people from Alberta, which is pretty common, I think, in that neck of the woods.
And it's from a Financial Times article that claims the Alberta Prosperity Project was seeking a meeting with just to get a credit facility for the transition fund there. They were seeking to get a $500 billion credit facility to transition to an independence and a separation referendum. So that's what that was, and that's where, David Eby, I mean, there's a lot of people that say he's the one that's destroying Canada by blocking a pipeline. So many people, the majority of Canadians want a pipeline. David Eby stands in the way. He doesn't want to look in the mirror for that one. He stands in the way of what Canadians want. He stands in the way of our economy is falling apart, literally falling apart. We have more and more people, record food bank lineups. And we just got the Liberal government's seeking applause by sprinkling some more crumbs out there for the people basically can't even afford to buy food. And this is what we should be applauding. And this, Eby loves a scapegoat, though. I mean, he seems to find a scapegoat every time he can. If it's not Trump, now he's got the Alberta. I don't know, like he's going to run out of people to hate. That's the thing. Like he's got everybody. He's targeted everybody at some point here.
But he's, just to give you an idea of the war that he's fighting to save his own skin, just a little bit of a sort of indication. He was asked a number of questions at a press conference in Ottawa yesterday, I think. Yeah, last night, I believe it was, about the NDP, the national NDP race, and specifically about Avi Lewis, that chap who we've featured a couple of times, and we had a good giggle about his pronouncements. And Avi Lewis, is very, very critical of David Eby's support, newfound support for LNG. And he's really snapping away at David Eby and the BC NDP for having committed the grievous sin of giving support to LNG. So David Eby, he's being pulled apart. You know, he's really being dragged in two directions at once. And I think that's the party in general as well in BC. The government is being pulled in two directions, and it's a very hard political tightrope to walk. So he's trying to appease that group within his own party that agrees with Avi Lewis that LNG is the devil's gas or whatever, you know. But at the same time, he's trying to like make sure that BC doesn't collapse into poverty, and also that he doesn't create this sort of terrible relationship with Alberta and the federal government. So he's got a lot of he's got a lot of pots boiling over at the same time.
He definitely has a full stovetop. And here, Daniel Smith put out another tweet there that she met with the U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, there, and in discussing. You got to know that Daniel's got a couple of options on the table. One is getting that pipeline through the south as opposed to the west coast, and then the other one is talking about north. So I mean, she's definitely working hard. You can't deny Danielle Smith is working hard for Alberta, and it shows in Alberta's economy. And she's looking at everything. And I mean, it is Canada's golden goose. It is literally Canada's golden goose, yet treated like, not so much.
But you listen to David Eby, and he talks, again, he was saying yesterday in that same press conference, BC's the golden goose, according to David Eby. BC's the province that pays for everybody else through equalisation payments, even though it was neutral in the most recent one. But I mean, in David Eby's mind, he's starting to sound like a sort of Quebec premier, isn't he? He just makes up his own economic reality. Because in Quebec, hilariously, the conversation is all about how Quebec subsidizes the rest of Canada. I don't know if other people are even aware of that, but that is literally what they talk about all the time, is how Quebec subsidizes the rest of Canada and subsidizes Alberta oil and things like that. It completely deluded, no relationship to reality. I think maybe David Eby's been watching Quebec political debates or something like that.
And then the nuclear energy engagement had a panel. They were in Fort Mac on January 27th, and Alberta's looking at nuclear energy as well. That won't be looked at here. Yeah, that won't be looked at here in BC. It's banned here in BC. So, almost everything is banned here in BC. Pretty soon we'll be banned here in BC.
Well, unless we go into the wind farm business, the wind farm podcast.
Doug Ford, you're talking about separatist movements. Doug Ford makes a plea to Quebecers. Listen to this.
It'd be a disaster for our country if the separatists got elected. It's as simple as that. We have to be a united Canada right now. There's never been a more important time in our history to make sure that we stand shoulder to shoulder, united. And not only it'll be good for Canada, it will be good for Quebecers. So folks, remember that. You want to thrive, you want to prosper, you'll prosper a lot more as a united Canada.
I don't know if the reverse is true, by the way, and that's going to be, if they do succeed in getting a referendum, I think that's going to be a question. Is Quebec in Canada better for the rest of Canada, rather than the opposite, which is the question he asked. I feel like that's a 20th century question. I think the question in this century is going to be, is it worth it for the rest of Canada to have Quebec in this confederation? Bear in mind, if they left, the extent to which they could be bullied by Canada, the Canada that remains. You know, it might actually be to the advantage of the rest of Canada. And when I say bullied, I mean, like, that's the kind of thing that happened. Like, the European Union bullies Switzerland, for example, and it bullies Norway, and it, to a lesser extent, bullies Britain as well, the countries that aren't in the European Union. The bigger country, or the bigger bloc, always bullies the littler one. Like, we're being bullied by the Americans, obviously. So this idea of an independent Quebec being like really harming the rest of Canada, I don't know. It would change things so much politically as well. And he said United Canada. For the first time in history, you might actually have a united Canada if it didn't have Quebec in it. The reason that Canada isn't united, one of the main reasons, is because Quebec is a nation within a nation. That you can't have a unity in that context, can you? It's always a compromise.
It would be the end of the Liberal Party as well. They would never, not for a long time, have power, because they basically give everything to Quebec to retain that power. And we're seeing all these policies. This is why we're in this anti-energy policy right now. This is why Canada is where it's at. This is why we're here right now.
Yeah. And, the surveys show it. I make a habit of always reading all the new polls and all the new surveys. Angus Reid, they get a lot of abuse, but they do some really interesting stuff, Angus Reid, in this regard, where they ask all kinds of interesting questions, and they ask each province every single time, almost every single time. You can tell which one is Quebec without even looking at the names, because it's the weird one. It's the one that doesn't align with the rest of the provinces. Like, Quebec really is, consistently is, different from the rest of Canada. And it's, I think that's verifiably true.
They say that themselves. They're a distinct society.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's true.
That's part of their thing. They have their own CPP. They're the only province that's allowed to have their own CPP, the QPP. They have a lot of things that are on their own. They're a very distinct society. They have culture, languages. They have all kinds of things, right? So,
well, they just knocked the crown off their off this symbol, I think, in the courts and things, because their coat of arms just had the crown, because obviously Quebec, at least nominally, is the head of state is the King Charles, but they don't like that because they're different, so they got rid of the crown. That was like last week, I think.
And then there's Jesse Ventura says Minnesota should join Canada. So I just thought I'd play this because just because there's nuts everywhere. So let's listen to this one here.
I am one that thinks, let me throw this out on your show and we'll get some headlines. Mm-hmm. How about, since Trump dislikes Minnesota so bad and we're so out of control, let's join Canada.
That's good enough.
Instead of Canada.
That's good enough, because he just goes into a longer. Hey, we don't need another. We don't.
To what he was in movies. Like, he was such a different character in the movies, wasn't he? Like, in Predator. Can you imagine his character in Predator being anything like the real Jesse Ventura?
We don't need another cold province. You can keep Minnesota.
I mean, it would immediately have the highest GDP per capita.
Yeah, there you go.
We could claim Bob Dylan as one of our famous sons.
And Jesse Ventura. It looks like he's seen better days.
Yeah, he's looking a bit rough, isn't he? He's looking, God knows what's going on with him.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't think Canadians would want Minnesota, would they? I think they would take California, but I don't think they would take Minnesota.
And CBC working on it. They're working it hard right now. They're working it hard. They went and found all the experts they could find here to, they want to control the internet. Listen to this here. Listen.
The U.S. is now considered one of the main sources of disinformation online, with popular social media platforms filled with fake accounts that are pushing false narratives. That has researchers here in Canada saying that Ottawa has to do more to increase online protection. Eli Glasner has all the details.
With talk of separation in both Quebec and Alberta, social media researchers are worried about a new front in the battle between Canada and the States.
We really need to get our act together on this because generative AI in the next 6, 12, 18 months is going to transform how we understand information.
So yes, we are incredibly vulnerable.
We really have to get serious about this. How are we going to get reliable news about what's happening on platforms that are owned by American billionaires?
Justin Ling is a columnist with the Toronto...
That's good enough. I can't even take it anymore. How about letting the news back on the platforms? How about that, Justin? How about that from the Toronto Star? How about that? How about getting rid of the Online News Act and allowing news media, independent outlets, putting their news back on that platform instead of the Liberals pushing out their propaganda? And the CBC, you want to talk about disinformation. The CBC is the home of disinformation and misinformation. We can play clips all day long on that.
Well, just look at our back catalogue, where we've pointed out that many, many, many times that they've spread disinformation. But it's not just them, is it? It's also the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
You know, he often puts out misinformation.
But they're going hard at work here to block, you know, like this is what they want to control information. That's what Mark Carney said when we asked the question ourselves. You know what about getting rid of the Online News Act? You're not going to like the answer. We're going to give more money to the CBC. Look what they've done with that money. Look what they've done with that money. Look at where Canada is. And look at their platform. Look at what they are. They are not a news outlet anymore. They are a propaganda outlet. Even government studies have said that they are nothing more than an arm of the Liberal government.
Yeah. I also can't help but observe the irony of this guy going on railing against the Americans as he sits in front of what appears to be a map of New York City. It's just another thing. This is, again, I like these cheeky little apparently trivial points. I like to make them. But I just think so many Canadians, and I mean specifically on the sort of liberal left, the elbows up people, they don't seem to realize that they are basically, to all intents and purposes, Americans. They just live in an American universe. They're right now, I can almost guarantee you, right at this moment, they're looking at videos and reading articles about events in Minneapolis that have absolutely nothing to do with Canada whatsoever.
Their whole website.
Don't even seem to realize that they live in an American world, and they've chosen that. Whereas the people that they detest, who are often in places like Saskatchewan and Alberta, aren't like that at all. They really do live in a Canadian world. They live in Canada. You know, it's like the irony of that.
You can go to the CBC website. We do it all the time. You can go there almost any time, and it's basically a TDS website. They basically, Donald Trump lives in their head. And that's what they do. They feed their base like the raw meat every day, and they live in fear. Because, you know, the headlines right now, they've got on there, U.S. is treason, Trump covert covets. I don't know.
Look at that one. Is MAGA weaponizing Alberta separatism? That is a glorious CBC headline.
It's just absolute trash. It's absolute. We're going to cover off some stories, waste, fraud, and abuse here in Canada. CBC doesn't want to cover those because, you know, they don't want to highlight anything that's wrong here in Canada. But here's our old friend Sebastian Szymanski there talking about the meeting with the premiers here. He used to be the PR guy for Pierre Poilievre.
I suppose like the ultimate proof, Sebastian, will be in when all of this materializes, what happens then? Because we still are kind of talking about it in the ether, but like there's no actual proposal that Alberta submitted yet. They say that's going to happen in June.
Exactly, Vashi. I mean, the proof will be in the pipeline, so to speak. I think, look, it's encouraging to see Prime Minister Carney is moonlighting as a therapist between the premiers providing such apt counseling. But I think it's important to remind Canadians and your viewers that there's one person in that room that holds all the cards, and that person is Prime Minister Carney. He's the one who has the sole jurisdiction to push through projects like this. British North America Act, I believe it's Section 92 that permits him to do this. So while I appreciate that we're reconciling the feelings of Premier Zeeby and Premier Smith, and obviously they represent two different constituencies that should be heard, the ball is really firmly in Prime Minister Carney's court, and it's time for him to actually go through with this, get out of the way in many instances, and in many of the regulations that remain in place that prevent these projects from being built, ironically, and proceed. So let's see when that actually happens. I hope, for the sake of Canadians, that it's sooner.
That's good. Again, is it 11 months now? It's got to be 11 months in this new government, and we're still talking about whether we're going to build a pipeline or not. There's no you hear EB stuff, like there is no project put forward. Like I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. You sit down. I'm an accountant. You sit down and you look, what's our number one asset that we can sell to the rest of the world? How do we generate money for Canada? What is it? Does anybody in the room figured that out yet? What is it? Let's see. Is it wind farms? No, it's not wind farms. Is it solar? Marketing consulting? No, that's what we buy. We buy a ton of that from New York. We get that from New York. It's oil. So now we have oil. How do we get it to other markets? And then somebody's got there. Well, they got the old reports there from Trudeau and Carney that says there's no business case for LNG even. So maybe they got to throw that report away. Anyway, it's just.
By the way, can we just point out that Vasi seems to very much like Sebastian, doesn't she? She always laughs at his puns and things. I wonder if that's her giving away some of her political leanings. We're watching Vasi.
Vasi's got to be the best of the worst out there for sure. I do like Vasi Kapelas. She does ask some questions. I mean, she could do a lot more. She could go watch a few of the UK interviewers and some of the Americans, even Caitlin Collins, to get a little more get into it instead of listening to them talk for like 15 minutes and not saying anything.
You're right. The best of the worst. That's the way to look at it. And she is all right. I think she's also constrained very much by the system. Like a system problem, isn't it?
If she
it can't be solved on an individual level.
If she went all Caitlin Collins, and I do like Caitlin Collins, I like her style from the CNN. Do you know what I mean? I don't agree with some of her stuff sometimes, but like she knows how to get at it. She knows how to dig in, and she's not scared, even though Bank of Canada yesterday cut the GDP outlook. This is the thing. We need to get something done. Jacqueline's right on. It's Alberta Oil. Come on. Like they would say, come on, Joe. Now, the Bank of Canada yesterday cut its 2026 forecast. So that's from TIFF, released a report warning stubborn unemployment and weak investment. Weak investment. Didn't Francois Philippe Champagne say that everybody's coming? Didn't they just say that just a second ago? Everybody's coming to Canada. Where are they? Where's the money? Did anybody show up? Uncertainty around, this is the thing, their talking points don't live up to the data. Their talking points don't live up to the data. And the uncertainty around our forecast is unusually high. There's a number of risks and uncertainties. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, David Eby. That's the biggest thing going on in Canada. Uncertainty. People don't even want to buy real estate in British Columbia because of the uncertainty that you unleashed with DRIPA. And Mark Carney reinforced with that. The bank 1 year ago predicted 2026 growth would be 1.8. GDP growth is forecast to pick up. That was from 2025. But an update says that's going to be around 1.1 and could get a lot worse. It's the intentions are weak. That's the thing. We've showed you graph after graph. I mean, you can talk all you want. The data says it goes against what the talking points are. Like how many times have you heard Francois Philippe Champagne says we have the strongest economy in the G7. You can do it better than me. But it's not true. It's just not true.
Also, something that they don't point out, the Bank of Canada didn't point it out. No other outlet, to my knowledge, pointed it out. But if your economy, if your GDP grows by 1.4% and your population grows by, let's say, 1.9% or something like that, which would be quite low by Canadian standards, then that means everybody in the country gets poorer. Your GDP per capita falls, which has been happening for how many years now? 5 years or something like that? Last numerous previous years in Canada, we've seen GDP per capita collapse because population increases basically 100% due to immigration, and the economy doesn't grow enough to, lift the water and lift the tide. So we all get a little bit more impoverished.
And if the GDP is at 1.1 and inflation's at 2.25.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
Well, that's what Christine Lagarde is on about, isn't she? She's saying we're always talking about nominal GDP growth. We're not talking about real GDP growth, which would mean factoring in inflation.
Negative.
And I was thinking, when she said that, I was thinking like, yeah, there's a reason. And it's people like you, when you're trying to BS the peasants, to try and fool them into thinking that the economy has actually grown when it hasn't.
Stagflation. And I warned about this like 2 years ago on my LinkedIn. You can go back and read some of my posts. It just seems like, how did I get all this stuff right? And they don't get it right, because I don't believe they're stupid. I just believe they like lying. They just gaslight you. Because, I mean, this stuff is pretty obvious. This stuff is really obvious. And the same goes for gold and silver. Even Ian and I, this show is about a year old now. We've been talking about gold and silver for a long time. And now here's gold and silver blows up, and I watch Bloomberg now. Now they get all the analysts on there talking about gold and silver like they ran it all along. You got to remember, Tiff Macklin and the rest of them said gold and silver is an antiquated asset, that they don't need it, that they don't have it in our reserves. And most of the financial managers said the same thing. And now all of a sudden they're just like, oh yeah. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday. This should be Canada's day to shine. Like the resource sector, and we went through yesterday, gold, silver, copper, all that stuff, high. But we've kiboshed our resource sector for the past 10 years. I'm going to get a mining guy on here again. We're going to talk about how long it takes to get a bloody exploration permit, right? It takes a while to go from a drill hole, the first discovery hole, to an actual operating mine. And I know this from working in a mine. I was a controller. I know lumber too. I worked on the green chain, and I worked in the sawmill industry for 10 years. I worked in forestry. I worked in wildfires. These people never worked in anything. Like Steve McKinnon couldn't even name 2 mining companies yesterday when he was pontificating there about how he knows about the economy and the great economy. He couldn't even name 2 mining companies. It's unbelievable. And the U.S. had held their rate steady today as well, just in another point there. The U.S. held their rates. Canadian dollar rising because the American dollar is falling, and that might have a lot to do with them trying to help the yen out as well, because the yen in that carry trade is weak right now. So that does support a cut because Canadians don't want a strong dollar. I mean, they've been artificially suppressing our dollar for a long time, and it's, I think, banging on the door at 75 cents. And likely, I mean, it's showed that there was not going to be a cut the next rate meeting. But, if the dollar gets stronger here, Canada's going to cut it because we just don't, that's one of our competitive edges is cheaper labor because of a weak dollar. And Trump knows that. That's why he's weakening the US dollar. He likes a weak dollar. China likes a weak dollar. Lots of people try to weaken their currency.
By the way, there's just a line in that story there from the press conference, Tiff Macklin's press conference, where he says, it's pretty clear that days of open rules-based trade with the United States are over. That sound familiar? And then he also said, we'll be better off if we adjust than if we don't. But clearly the end of open rules-based trade with the United States is not a good thing. So he's just, as is often the case, his opinions are almost identical to Mark Carney's.
Yeah.
Which is a bit, I don't know. Some people might think that's a good thing, but he's supposed to be independent.
Carney once again gets basic economic statistics wrong. This is we'll play this clip here first here.
Through the joint review of the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement later this year. Today we'll discuss how we can coordinate all of those efforts on trade and inbound investment to maximize their impact. Of course, as we're building new partnerships abroad, we're focused.
Yeah, that's the wrong time in there. The piece that we wanted there was he was saying that the Association of Southeast Asian Nations represented more than 20% of global GDP. Oh, he's given the right click here. So just there you go. It's at 249. Play that piece there.
Should have just said that. I don't know why I wrote it, but
he's going to play it here.
We intend to advance our trading relationships with global giants, including India, the ASEAN countries representing more than 20% of global GDP, and Mercosur. And we will work to renew our most important economic and security relationship.
Good.
Amazing, that, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I am by no means an economist or an economic expert, but I didn't even need to Google that. I was just like, immediately, I was like, that's wrong. And then, obviously I did then Google it just to make sure that, because you assume, don't you? You think, no, I'm wrong. It must be me that's wrong because it's Mark Gandalf Carney. He's the one who's just stood on the mountain, held his staff in the air and said that ASEAN countries represent 20% or more than 20% of GDP. But no, once again, he's got one of the most basic facts wrong. Is he doing it? Is he like trying to wind us up, do you think? Is he just trying to frustrate us or something? I don't know what it is, but it's starting to become a real habit. This is just like every other week now.
Well, this was just shortly after he did it with Canada plus the Nordic represent 20%. Maybe he's got 20% stuck in his head or something like that because he just and he's reading it off a piece of paper. It's not like he got a number.
Yeah,
on
no,
it.
yeah.
Literally reading.
Maybe it's his people feeding him wrong statistics or something like that. Maybe he's like hired somebody that doesn't know anything. But that is absolutely astonishing to think that the ASEAN countries are like Thailand and like the countries in Southeast Asia. Obviously, they're not 20% of world GDP. I mean, it's just not by any metric, not by purchasing power parity, not nominally. There's no way to make that happen. There's no way to get that to add up. Crackers. I mean, and it still echoes in my mind that he said completely poor-faced that Canada's like one of the major semiconductor producers in the world.
Yeah. I think he was talking about Old Dutch when he said that Canada's the leading supplier of chips. And I think he was at the bar there and he was looking at the Old Dutch and the old Nallies, or I don't know which one's the Canadian chip maker, but like he said that in a bar. He said that Canada, we can cut off the supply of chips to the Americans. I'm just like, what are you talking about? I mean, you don't have to be much of an economist here in Canada or know much in Canada to know that we're not a major supplier of chips to the Americans.
Well, here we go, Bonnie Island in the comments. I have a feeling that she might be quite a fan of Mark Carney's. Says, you're not an economist, get off your high horse. I know I'm not an economist, but our Prime Minister is an economist. So why did I know that and he didn't? Why has he done this several times? This is the equivalent. I don't know what you do, Bonnie Island, for a living, but let's just say that you're a doctor or something or a nurse. It's the equivalent of one of those medical people just getting something like completely, insanely wrong. Just like confusing, antibiotics and painkillers or something. That's how serious and weird this is. I mean, aren't you curious? I know you might love him. You might think that he's Canada's savior. Aren't you curious why he keeps getting these basic facts wrong?
Yeah, and it's twice too, like in a week. And there's a lot of misinformation, and they talk about the CBC talk about how they don't want to spread misinformation, disinformation, and they continually spread it.
Also, let's not. We're being told here in the background that it's more like 2%. By the way, GDP, not more than 20%. So quite a dramatic, like an extraordinary mistake. But I just wanted to point out as well, another thing, Mark Carney traded his reputation, his professional reputation, his resume. He traded on that. That's why he won power. He is Prime Minister of this country to a pretty decent extent because he's considered to be an economic wizard. This is like, he sold himself as this. He didn't get elected because of his charisma, because he has none. He didn't get elected for any other reason. His looks, his fashion sense, his great deep connection with Canada. It's not really a country he's lived in very much of his life. He was elected because his supporters said he was an economic genius, like an economic savant who was going to come in and he was going to do some kind of magical wizardry and he was going to fix the Canadian economy. I think we should actually make more of a fuss about this than even we are here, because this is his entire USP. This is his entire brand, and he can't even get the basics right. It's like it's like an expert in African mammals or something like that saying, "Oh yeah, the hyena is the fastest animal in the world. That's the fastest land animal is the hyena." And then someone's like, isn't it the cheetah, mate? It's just like Gandalf says no.
Yeah, and this is, and it's not that it's a one-time occurrence. That's the thing that's troubling, because he should know these things. These are basic facts, and then even the misdirection all the time, where he doesn't speak clearly, and he intentionally doesn't speak clearly when he answers questions. Those are the ones that are more troubling, even. But here's some questioning for the PBO here in committee.
Mark, your report on the investments. Can I just ask a very basic question on the definition of capital and spending, which I think supports your research here? The government provided a table in the budget on page 283 that showed a comparison of what other countries do when they call something a capital investment. The government offered actually no comparing country that treated corporate income tax credits as an investment in capital. Do you have a view on that? I don't believe they've offered any other country that does that, and I'm not sure that is in kind of alignment with other countries that split capital and operating.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I would go back to the comments that we provided to the committee previously, that we highlighted in our Budget 2025 Issues Note, that it is a very broad definition. We are unaware of any advanced jurisdictions that would define capital in that way, including corporate income tax tax credits that are being provided. There are other measures as well, including operating subsidies provided to companies that are potentially related to capital investments that the Government of Canada also includes, that is not really seen in other jurisdictions. In reading through the report and the commentary from the International Monetary Fund, it's evident that the International Monetary Fund also shares those concerns, which is why the International Monetary Fund, similar to ourselves, we highlighted in October and in November, International Monetary Fund several months later, but highlighting the same issue, that potentially be worthwhile to learn from other jurisdictions and use a consistent definition that other people use.
Jason Jack still hanging in there.
Yeah, and we're always told that we've got to align with the rest of the world, and that's a virtue, isn't it? To be like the rest of the world. Like, for example, when they want to pass some law on censorship or whatever, something, just as an example, it's always like, and the other G7 countries do this. But in this case, apparently it's okay. We don't have to be in alignment with them.
Right, because when it works out to, and I'm an accountant, and I would say, that seems odd. Seems odd. We just got an email, or I just got an email, personal email here from a Bernie, and saying it's very obvious you give conservative views. As a journalist, I pride myself on telling facts, not my personal points of view. Says that my Freedom Convoy comments that I'm a small town YouTube hack. That's my claim to fame. Small town YouTube hack. So yeah, two courts agreed with what we're saying. Two courts, the appeal court, agreed that people's constitutional freedoms were trampled on, literally trampled on. See how this works? You know what I mean? Like, they do not like an opposing point of view. So CBC can spread misinformation and disinformation all day long. And then somebody with a burner account here and a Yahoo address will send some piece of hate at me. Do you know what I mean? Like, literally hate. And derogatory, to minimize and marginalize what we have to say on this show. This is what we're fighting against. This is literally what we're fighting against.
Yeah, but imagine what's gone through their head if they've gone to the trouble of doing that. Obviously, they're feeling a little bit small.
Their anger.
They want to lash out.
Their anger and all that stuff. Here's another Liberal Party. This is in French. We're not going to play it, but this is the brag point, the tout here. 12 new trade and security partnerships signed. 11 new nation-building projects. Where is the result?
Referred.
Avert. Like, you know what I mean? A meeting to have a meeting isn't put food on the table. Where? When will something get done? When will something get done? Again, I have lots of friends in the mining sector. When? When? Thanks for the email, by the way, Bernie. That's great. You know, why don't you just put you're a journalist. Which outlet do you represent? Let's see it. We've been doing this, and we are an accredited news organization here. And we had a lot larger newsroom till the, what's that called? The Liberal government's Online News Act put its boot to our throat and closed nearly 100 outlets across Canada. Anyway, the Conservatives put forward a motion there, the pro-investor motion, it's a Conservative motion, voted down 197 to 137. Imagine that. Imagine that. They were proposing the opposition parties to work with government, but the contrast between Liberals and Conservatives is truly amazing. That's from Kevin Lamoureux. Yeah, what they proposed was the Impact Assessment Act, repealing of the Bill C-69, repealing of Bill C-48, the federal carbon, and repealing of the federal industrial carbon tax, the oil and gas emissions cap, the electric vehicle mandate, the plastics manufacturing prohibitions, federal regulatory regulations impeding communication and advocacy by energy companies. They all seem to make common sense if we really want to get Canada moving forward, don't they? Doesn't Mark Carney kind of say those things kind of in the background, although he once put CCUS on top of it?
But this will destroy everything. Everything is so fragile and it has to be chaperoned by the Liberals because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and then the Conservatives of BC put out a press release here too. Stop telling David Eby to stop picking winners and losers. The government's role is set clear that they want to lift some projects up, but then they want to suppress others like oil and gas, right? And then I don't get the wind thing. Remember Wab Canoe and David Eby did that little cheesy little TikTok or whatever where they were talking about Canada's going to lead in wind energy?
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, there are two provinces, aren't they, Manitoba and BC, that have just they've almost been spoiled in a sense. They're like spoiled kids because they've had hydro. And hydro is such an amazing gift, really, isn't it? And it really is a gift. It's not something that you can just invent out of thin air. You have to have the landscape for it to work. And they've just kind of Quebec's another example. They've just kind of been blessed by nature, and as a consequence, they don't seem to understand how important energy is and how hard it is to generate and how you have to take it very seriously. And in places like Alberta, where they don't have hydro or not very much, they have to take it very, very, very seriously.
One thing
I do think there's something to that. It's like they're just they've just had it too good almost in the energy department.
I do want to make one more point on the Bernie thing, and this is the typical stuff we get. Whenever our viewpoint is not liberal and doesn't follow the talking points, they use the word conservative views like it's beyond the pale. This country is based on multiple parties. They use it like that's an insult. Like, how dare you have conservative views? Like, how dare you be a conservative? When actually, I mean, we had here in Kelowna, Jean Chrétien, and I got to introduce him because Jean Chrétien was my favorite politician of all time. And I thought I had liberal views, but the liberal lunatics moved, like, I don't know where they moved to, somewhere way over there. And I stayed where I was. And then all of a sudden, anytime you disagree with lunacy, they just throw, different things at you and they label you. But, it's okay to be a conservative. It's also okay to be a liberal. It's also okay to be an NDP. It's okay to be whoever you want to be. But they don't believe in democracy. They believe in just mind think, group think. But here you go, though. The Liberals have okayed it. Now you can start, the next one. You can now start talking about the Online News Act because you know who, Ian and I said it quite a while ago. It will be the Americans that force the Liberals to stop censoring news here in Canada. And it is part of the sticking points there with the CUSMA agreement. So now they're starting to talk about it again. So Mark Miller says that they're willing to talk at any point. You know, at least there's discussions going on now. And hopefully that the pressure from the Americans will free media in Canada to go put their news back on there. And we've done more work on the Online News Act probably than every other outlet combined in Canada. I've been interviewed on The National on CBC for it. Ian's done interviews with some of the biggest people in media here in Canada. And
also, I think they've got this wrong, and not for the first time. They've got the Online News Act wrong. The CBC and the rest of them, they've got it wrong a number of times. And Canadian Press put this. They have this one person that writes Online News Act stories or media stories, and I'm so sorry to say it about a fellow journalist, but she doesn't seem to know what she's doing. I have the first idea what she's doing, but that's besides the point. I think they've got this wrong because when I interviewed Pascal Santonge, who is not the predecessor of Mark Miller, but his predecessor's predecessor in that job as Heritage Minister, so that was like 2 years ago. When I interviewed her, that was the first question that I asked. I said, "Are you talking to Meta?" And she said, "The door's always open, and we see them around, and we're ready to talk to them." Like, of course. And that's basically what Mark Miller said. So it's the same thing. And then they've sent out firefighting emails now, his office, saying this isn't new. Like, nothing's changed. It's just like it was. We've always been prepared to speak with them. And that's it. This is so flimsy, by the way. It's like, it was literally, Mark Miller was ambushed in a corridor and he said like very, very little. But because nobody else knows anything about the Online News Act in Canada, most of the media outlets don't know a thing about it. They think this is a story and they're jumping on it. But it's not really. I don't think it is. The story is what you said, is that the Americans don't like it. And the Americans have named it. And they've said, we want this killed because it's a trade irritant. That's the news story. It's not Mark Miller saying basically what Pascal Santonge said 2 years ago. That's not the news story, I don't think.
I did watch a piece on Bloomberg this morning, and they did highlight that in the Bloomberg piece, that this was highlighted by the U.S. Trade Commission, that this is the reason that they're looking at it. This is the reason they're looking at it. You won't get that out of...
It changes the equation a bit, yeah.
I mean, it is censorship. It is basic censorship. And the sad thing is, Ian did the story too. The Liberals spent over $5 million during the election cycle because they said the Meta platforms were too important to ignore during an election. And they still continue to post on it. You can go on there. Actually, if you can find Liberals posting on Facebook, post this live right underneath their thing and say, free the media in Canada. Just post it right, just spam it all over their stuff, because they continue to push out propaganda and talking points, and they don't let the media go on Facebook. And it is, and we agree, it is one of the most important platforms for news. People depended on it. All the media, including CBC, saw their traffic drop in half after Facebook was banned, after news was banned on Facebook. I did the story on The National. We've done tons of the stories. Revenues cut in half. Newsrooms cut in half. Kamloops this week closed, and they cited the Online News Act ended our business. CTV said they laid off 4,800 employees, cited the Online News Act. But the Liberals, even Stephen Fuhr, the MP here, said it has to go. And then when I talked to somebody that knows him, said, well, it's just not a priority right now. What are the priorities? Because I don't see any priorities getting done. What are the priorities? Just tell me a priority.
But also, it's worth bearing in mind, you said and I said as well, they don't really cover this story very much, the rest of the main press outlets in Canada. I don't think it's a coincidence that most of the main outlets in Canada advocated for the Online News Act as well. So this is their policy. This is a fire that they started themselves, and they're not even interested in putting it out. They are happy for this to happen. And my feeling, based on interviewing a lot of people and sort of doing my own chin rubbing, is that they're actually quite happy to see their potential rivals in the independent media be extinguished, because they're the ones that rely on Facebook for a leg up, for exposure, because everybody already knows that CTV exists. You don't need to see CTV news on Facebook to be like introduced to this outlet. It's like, oh, cool, CTV, I'll check this out. You already know, and you already watch it. You go to their website, you might have their app on your phone or something like that. Whereas an independent outlet has to build up that reputation. It's very, very hard to do that without Facebook. So I feel like, you know, it was always kind of the people in the tower chopping down the ladder so that nobody else could get up there.
Terry Newman from the National Post, she's an opinion writer. She said that journalists are more important than ever, but only if they're doing their jobs. And that's the thing that they're not doing. Most of them are activists, absolute activists. And here's David Cochrane. He's got to be one of the biggest activists or liberal shills. Listen to Kevin O'Leary is definitely a firebrand, but listen to David Cochrane protect the liberals. Listen to this.
$100 billion into Canada. Who doesn't want to do that? The only guy I know that doesn't want that is Gerald Butts. And I think we've had enough of him.
Well, I mean, like, Gerald Butts has been out of government for a long time. So, I mean, he's...
Oh, wait a second. Wait, that's not true.
Well, it is. I mean, no, he works with Ian Bremmer now.
Let me correct you. When there was a majority mandate by Trudeau, and he had it in the first mandate, Butts put all the policy in place.
Sure.
Daniel Smith had to litigate that policy in October 2023 to get me to bring back $70 billion into Canada. Okay. Gerald Butts is the antichrist of Canada.
Oh, okay. Well, look, you know, Mr. Butts is a private citizen now. He's not in public life. He does not control the government. He hasn't been since. So anyway, but I want to move on.
Wait a second. Isn't he backing the Liberal leadership right now? Didn't I hear Carney is going to bring him in behind him?
Well,
that's an unholy union.
Okay. All right. Well, look.
Just a good example of David Cochrane there. Just defending.
That's not one for the highlight reel, is it, Mr. Cochrane?
Yeah. He doesn't interrupt when the Liberals go off on just some tangent of blaming everybody. They're just like, you know, they just give him more space than they ever would need. And this is Vassie trying to hold Steve McKinnon to account. This is where she needs to be a little more Caitlin Collins. Let's listen in on here.
I note that both you and the Prime Minister said there's no election in the offing, but the announcement in and of itself seems to run very counter to what Mr. Carney talked about during the Prime Minister talked about during the election campaign. He drew a distinction between his approach to the economic growth and what he criticized the Trudeau government, of which you were a part, their approach to economic growth, which he identified as just through immigration and population growth and government spending. What you announced yesterday is more than $11 billion of additional government spending that nobody from your government has said how you will pay for it. I imagine because you're not introducing a new tax or something to that effect, or described other cuts elsewhere, that it will come from additional borrowing. That runs counter to what Mr. Carney said during the election campaign, what you yourself have said on many instances since then. How are we to infer from that anything other than this is about politics and the possibility of an election?
Well, I don't think Mr. Carney ever ruled out measures to help vulnerable Canadians, and I don't think most Canadians think that helping out the
That's good. That's good. I
people.
mean, I can give you the answer he gives. It's just nothing, just round and round and round, because we got to get through a bunch of stuff here. He goes around and around in circles, never answers the question. And yesterday, McKinnon there.
I'm sorry, the description there in that tweet. McKinnon goes into help the children infomercial mode. That's quite witty.
It's just he couldn't even name two mining companies yesterday. When he named one mining company, then he said LNG. I'm just he knows little about anything. But
got to serve the children, though, haven't you?
Yeah. This is a Liberal NDP, a Liberal MP, Adam Van Koerden, blames food price inflation. Didn't the food professor tell us, and the Save On Food guy tell us, there's industrial carbon tax, the packaging thing, and all this stuff? But he's going to blame it on climate change. We're not even going to play the clip because we've got to get through some stuff. Blames it on climate change. So they're still there. They're still there. They're still pushing out that same agenda that they've been pushing out that suppressed Canada's economy for 10 plus years. So he's still there. That's what I mean. Carney, even if Carney is trying to change Canada's path, he's still dealing with these people. Stephen Gabos and this guy here.
What do you say? I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's like How can you realistically persuade? Do you think that you could go up to like a proper hardcore religious person and persuade them to drop their religion? That's kind of what it's like. It's not a political conversation anymore, is it? It's like a theological dispute. I think we've learned over thousands of years that there's not much point in trying to persuade people to switch religions, or at least it's very difficult to do it. So what is it? Almost like, what's the point of even countering? What's the point of even engaging with it? It's like somebody's standing up and declaring their faith in their God or something. It's like, sure thing.
On November 5th, the climate grift ended. And that was, you can figure out what happened on that date. Mark Carney's Net Zero Alliance basically died that day as well. Mark Carney's Net Zero Alliance, where the banks like JP Morgan and the rest of them started to walk away, including then after that, I think in the new year, including all the Canadian banks, all walked away, and then they folded up the Net Zero Alliance. Mark Carney started that in COP26. That was his baby. He created the financial instruments, financialized that whole industry. It was basically what Brookfield is built on, globalization of climate technologies and grift. And that was what it was based on. It all fell apart. And now look who's walking away from it, none other than Canada's pension plan. So Canada's largest pension, Canada's largest pension fund walks away from net zero pledges, right? So the Pension Plan Investment Board invested at least $7.1 billion in new fossil fuel and pipeline assets between October 24 and October 25, and that's from the pension watchdog. The pension fund was also recently in the spotlight for investing about $416 million. This is what they do, virtue signaling. The pension fund invested $416 million into Elon Musk's AI company, XAI. Better go get them. Okay.
This is a thing, though, isn't it? With money, like they tend to go where they get the returns. Obviously, they can virtue signal or whatever all they want. They can pretend to be moral creatures in public, but when it comes down to the money, they put it where they get returns.
Here's the thing. This is the NDP, the interim leader here, Don Davies. Just fear mongering. And this is the base they're after. They have so few people. And if you're listening to Don Davies, he shouldn't have any power. People like this shouldn't have any power. If they're fear-mongering that the Americans are going to attack, I mean, that is so ludicrous. It's absolutely like you're preying on people's weakness. This is. Let's listen to him first here.
I'm joined with my caucus members that are here in Ottawa. Today in Parliament, Canada's New Democrats will be requesting an emergency debate on the recent deeply concerning statements and actions by the Trump administration that have grave implications for the sovereignty and security of Canada. On January 3rd, President Trump ordered American forces to disregard international law and core principles of national sovereignty by attacking Venezuela, a United Nations member state. Following this act, President Trump stated that the U.S. would, quote, run the country, end quote, and specifically referenced Venezuela's oil reserves as a prime motivation for this assault. This aggression was followed by President Trump's announcement of the establishment of a Dunro Doctrine, considering the entire Western Hemisphere to be within the sole hegemonic control of the United States. President Trump and senior U.S. administration officials then expressed their intent to seize Greenland, an internationally recognized territory of Denmark, another UN member state, and importantly, NATO member. They justified this aggression.
That's good.
By reference.
I can't listen to him anymore. So yeah, so he's like basically the Americans are coming to invade us. Get ready. And they invaded Venezuela. And they invaded Venezuela. Like, it's funny that the Venezuelans were like partying, but hey. So you want them to put Maduro back there? Is that what you want, Don? Is that what you want? Is that better for you? Is that what you think? The people should be oppressed by somebody that has oppressed those people. 8 million people fled. That country's been put into, it used to be one of the richest countries in the world. You want him back? Is that what you want? You want to take him back? You want to pick him up, take him back there, Don?
Well, they often have I was telling you about this. Jeremy Corbyn in Britain is another one. A lot of these old lefties, like proper old school lefties, like what the NDP used to be, that kind of lefty. They used to have a real soft spot for Chavismo, like for Hugo Chavez and his protege and successor, Nicolas Maduro. And it's, you know, if it was, you know, if it was on the right, if it was a right wing party that had sympathies with some movement around the world that was on the right, then we would all have seen CBC documentaries and New York Times articles about it and stuff. But because it's the left, it doesn't happen. But it's crackers, you know. It's really
it's
really deranged.
This is weakness of leadership, and if you fall for these tactics, they use fear. Like, who follows a leader that uses fear to get you to follow them? Who uses fear? Like, if you're going in a battle with somebody, do you want to go with somebody that just teaches you about fear all the time? Or do you want somebody that shows you a better tomorrow? Because they have no ideas. They have no ideas. They have no good ideas because they can't sell a good idea. This is how we prosper. This is how we do this. All they know how to do is sell fear. They sell fear.
But you say, like, going into a battle, I feel like that weakens your analogy because this person and people like him, they're not talking about battles. It's all just passive-aggressive finger wagging while the American military goes and does stuff. Okay. What are we going to do then? What are you really going to do? Because this is not the equivalent of somebody putting their armor on and saying, to battle, men. It's not like that. He's just kind of sitting there in the corner and he's like complaining about it and saying that it's wrong. But what are you going to do about it? America is the hegemonic power in the Western Hemisphere. Okay, now what? What are we going to do about it then? Are we going to resist them militarily? Are we going to invade? Like, what's your plan?
They want you to, they give you a deputy badge so you can scream online, come and scream at us, call us whatever you want to call us, conservatives or whatever it is, and silence us. And that's what they want you to do. Paint your hair blue and start screeching and screaming, but do nothing to better this country. Do nothing to better this country. What good idea have you put forward, Don Davies? I don't see them. I don't see anything out of the NDP, and I don't see any action out of the Liberals. They talk a lot, but there's not a lot of action.
And this is the party supposedly of the working man and of the unions. And yet later on, we're going to look at a story where one of the auto unions, the head of one of the auto unions, comes out and says the best thing that could possibly happen is that we make friends with the Americans. That's how we'll get jobs back. This is the thing, like with these left parties, like often union aligned parties, they've just drifted away from reality and their own membership. The people that they are supposed to be there to represent have completely changed. They're on a completely different page, and they increasingly represent just like teenagers in cities and things like students, like university students.
And you think it's just the NDP, the federal NDPs that have lost their mind? Listen there to Nishi here, who's the head of the NDP, and he even puts creepy music in the background. I mean, who's listening to this stuff? Like, come on, like, get help. Get help. Watch this show. Watch this show just for a couple of weeks, and then see if you can, like, get your head out of the fear of just constant fear. Listen to what Nishi has to say here.
Friends, if you've been deeply troubled by world events lately, Venezuela, Greenland, NATO, you are not alone. The world has entered a dangerous new phase. And at times like...
You go find it, because it's just basically the same speech, just that he put creepy music in behind his, as opposed to Don Davies. The same NATO, Greenland, Venezuela.
Yeah, also, do you listen to the list? He said world events, and then he just listed American things. Again, another person on the left in this country, an elbows up person, who is completely absorbed by events in the United States, who might as well be American, because that's all he cares about is America. It's a foreign country, mate. Get over it. And then he lists all these things, world events. Some of the things that I'm worried about in world events are, for example, the massacre of Iranians. What about that? Oh, no, sorry, America's not really involved in that, so we're not going to mention that in things that we're worried about. What about China executing people willy-nilly? Is that something you're bothered about? Oh, no, not really, mate. I'm just bothered about Donald Trump. You would really think that these people had votes in the American elections. They're obsessed with the Americans.
I mean, that the people that wear the tinfoil hat there saying that the Democratic Party is funding some of these movements here in Canada. It kind of like ties together. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, because why don't they mention Iran? Why don't they mention China? Even Ukraine at this point. You know what I mean? All these other things that are happening. Nothing. It's in Iran. They're begging for the Americans to come. And in Venezuela, they're having parades in the street for the Americans.
It's so it's just so myopic. It's so like parochial, isn't it? It's so funny. You got that email, somebody saying about you being small town or whatever. How small time is that? They just live in this small myopic little bubble, don't they? Where they don't see the real world. They don't actually see what people around the world think about Donald Trump in America. And as you've just mentioned, Iranians begging the Americans to get involved. Not the only people, not the only country where that's true. But here we are in our very safe country, protected by the United States, prosperous thanks to, at least in large part, the United States. And we just bicker and whine and complain about them. It's just not practical. You know, it's not a real engagement with reality. Yeah. It's like a parallel reality, isn't it?
And then the media, CBC was doing their work. They're identifying businesses in Canada that do business with ICE in the United States. And here's another one. Now they're saying that there's 5 ICE stations in Canada. What? Ottawa, Calgary, Montreal? And these have been operating for a long time. These are a post 9/11 thing. But this is the beast. This is the group of people that they go and get all riled up for these things. And it's just absolutely atrocious what they do here.
Surely people now can see how it works. This is the old playbook. We've seen this, surely, haven't we? Loads of times. We saw loads of these running simultaneously in the year 2020, where they're trying to make an entity or an individual so poisonous and so toxic that they try and generate a witch hunt. So the witch hunt now is against this thing called ICE that people don't really even understand. They don't know what the hell that is. They just know that it's evil and stormtroopers work for it, and they're going around and they're killing nurses in the street, completely unprovoked, madness. And so it's like a moral panic. And there's a machine that exists. There are professionals who do nothing but this. They just try and pump this. They try and get the agitprop out there because they're interested in certain political outcomes. You know, in this case, it's about, usually it emanates from the Democratic Party. They want the Democratic Party to be in power. That's often where you'll see it, you can trace it back to.
I was going to play another clip from Don Davies here, but I'm not going to because this is too painful. He shouldn't be given space to speak. It's if you want to talk about misinformation, it's better. He says that they're not going to form a coalition with the Liberals, probably because Mark Carney is smart enough not want to get that stink on him from people that are fear mongering. Although the Liberals do a lot of it themselves, but this fear mongering is absolutely atrocious. Because I don't think Mark Carney would make that same speech about Venezuela and the Americans, not in public anyway. Anyway, they ask, and here's the media, because for some strange reason, the CBC and that just dislike Pierre Poilievre. They just absolutely have an absolute disgust with Pierre Poilievre. And they're trying to get Flip-Flop Ford to take over the job. They're going to ask Flip-Flop Ford if he's going to run for the Conservative Party, because Pierre is having his leadership convention in Calgary here this weekend. Let's listen to Flip-Flop Ford. I think it actually starts tomorrow.
Hi, this question is for Premier Ford. It's Stephanie Taylor with the National Post. As a Conservative, what number do you think Mr. Poilievre needs to get at his leadership review? And in your assessment, is he the national leader that Conservatives need right now?
Well, I'm really focused on Ontario. We're having our convention the same time they are. So I'm focusing on this weekend, getting the message out to our progressive Conservative base in Ontario and telling them the plan.
That's good. Look at the nodders in the back. How do you get the people in the background just to nod? Just like, okay, remember you have to nod in the background.
You can see in his face though that it was almost like a disgust reaction when he heard the name Pierre Poilievre. So he obviously absolutely loathes the man.
And then this is how the government's getting ready for the auto sector. They won't kill that EV mandate, like literally will not kill that EV mandate. And here's, the auto sector is one of the most important sectors in Canada, the auto sector here. And we go back to the other clip there because we have Patty Hajdu there. Says, we won't play the clip there. She says they're prepared. They're getting unemployment insurance, enhanced unemployment insurance. That's how you're preparing? This is what we're doing? And then let's play the clip here on the GM plant that's cutting 1,000 jobs on Friday.
Last day on the job for hundreds of workers at GM Oshawa as the plant cuts its third shift.
Unifor confirming this morning to CP24 that 700 jobs at that plant and another 300 spin-off jobs are impacted by the decision. Quick math, that is 1,000 jobs. The union says the layoffs are the result of GM shifting operations to the U.S. amid U.S. President Trump's trade war. GM originally announced this move last May on the heels of Trump's announcement of tariffs on Canadian vehicles. The GM plant in Oshawa will now be running with 2 shifts.
EV mandate. GM and Ford, GM stock way up, Ford stock up because they got the EV mandate from the United States taken off their head. They can't make any money selling those cars. They lost billions of dollars. Ford and GM wrote off billions of dollars. They cannot make money selling EVs. They took the pressure off of them. It's like taking a lid off of them and the stocks exploded. And they're going great guns. They're opening new shifts, new plants in the United States. Like, again, can somebody just take a look at what's the reality of the moment? The reality of the moment. Do they see the reality of the moment? They don't. They don't see the reality of the moment. They're still pushing EV mandates here in Canada. They just won't let it go. They will not let it go. And you're pushing these people to the United States. You're pushing out the auto sector with a plan to get China. And then again, just open your eyes and look what China's done to other nations with their EVs. Like it's just unbelievable. So 1,200 more jobs gone. These are good paying jobs. 500,000 people rely on the automobile sector in Ontario. Like this right now, if they run an election, this alone could cost them Ontario, and the Liberals. Because I mean, if you're looking at this, I'm sure most of them aren't going to trust the Chinese EVs to giving them jobs. And this is a response here from GM CEO Mary Barra saying that she has warned Mark Carney deals to bring in Chinese EV and potentially encourage some to be built in Canada. Very, very slippery slope. And she can't explain why the decision was made in Canada, suggesting the move was a risk to North American auto manufacturing. I mean, this is what China's been trying to do. They want a foothold into North America. They want a foothold. That's why, you're seeing all that pressure from China saying, let's get this deal signed, let's sign it, let's sign it, let's sign it. There's so much pressure, let's sign it, because they know that there's going to be pushback from the Americans. There's going to be literally pushback from Mexico on it, right? They want a foothold.
Mexico is a lot deeper. A lot further down the line on this. I think something like 25% or something of, I can't remember exactly what it is, 25% of their imports or something come from China. So on cars, I mean. So they're a lot worse. But if you remember, a lot of the Biden presidency was Joe Biden and his acolytes complaining very, very loudly about Mexico doing this. They were really unhappy about it. And that's kind of where that EV tariff came from, in part, because they saw Mexico as like the Trojan horse for Chinese anti-market activity. And, like I said, when we heard about this deal, let's just hope, fingers crossed, that this is Carney trying to negotiate, that this is all just part of the negotiation farce. And this is like playing on the Americans' worst fears. That's like, yes, we are going to do this. We are going to bring China in, this thing that you have feared for so long in the United States, unless you give us a nice, tasty deal. So, like, I hope that that's what it is. But if it isn't, then the Americans are going to be just furious about this. Like, they've really drawn a very bright red line about this. They hate this. So, yeah, that's what she's expressing, something that it's like bipartisan. Basically, everyone in America agrees with that.
Here we got some stuff. This one from Hollywood Blacklocks, like Crown Bank. The Farm Credit Canada yesterday said it's hiring counselors to provide emotional support for staff facing layoffs. The notice came as the Treasury Board said it will cut 1,000 executive positions. Counselors? Spend more money. Farm Credit Canada invites proposals from qualified firms to provide career transition support services on an as-needed basis. And they're going to cut 1,000 execs. I mean, this is coming. This is coming in a lot of sectors in the government. And don't forget, this party campaigned on that. Pierre's going to cut you. Remember, what's his name? Bruce Fanjoy.
Bruce Fanjoy.
Bruce Fanjoy said that it's going to be Pierre that cuts you. I mean, the costs of just, I mean, they've also taken advantage.
That was such a betrayal, really, wasn't it? I mean, we can't emphasize that enough. Fanjoy. He didn't bring joy to his fans, did he? Who believed that he was gonna save the public service. And I'm, being in Ottawa, I've already, on a personal level, already heard of quite a lot of people who have been given these notices. It's very real, and it's affecting everybody, just about all. Everybody knows somebody, and it's sad because they were deceived. They were ruthlessly deceived by the Liberal Party.
But they also took advantage of Canadian taxpayers for quite a while here, because and everybody was just taking more and more and more from the taxpayer. Cabinet doubled the cost of executive salaries from 2016 to 2024, according to and that's from a paper tabled there. The number of executive group managers grew from 7,181 to 10,077 over that period. Executive pay grew from $1 billion to $1.9 billion. At some point, you just take too much. You just take too much out of the fridge, and then you go back in the fridge and it's empty. In Canadians,
this behavior is why the minibar cost so much money, isn't it? Because people took advantage of the minibar, so now you have to pay big bucks for that mini whiskey.
Well, PSAC's not going to take this standing up or sitting down. Cabinet must detail a full scope of piecemeal service cuts for layoffs, and that's from the National President of the Public Service Alliance. So they said, we're putting them on notice. So there you go. Here comes the reaction, right? The government needs to be very clear on the public on how many programs and service will be affected. Results of these reckless cuts. People across Canada, even reckless cuts. Remember the people that were just watching Netflix? People that aren't coming to work. They only come in 3 days of the week. The fraud, waste, and abuse that we outline all the time, those are reckless. The Treasury Board job cuts at approximately 40,000. So yeah, so there's some cuts coming. So Carney did say he was going to make cuts. So sounds like they're making cuts, but it's kind of sneaky the way they're doing it. But they say they are, then they aren't, they are, then they aren't, and they're going to do it through attrition, and all of a sudden there's cuts. So it's very, very kind of like interesting for sure. PSAC in 2023 won a $5.2 billion settlement following a 12-day strike. Cabinet met key demands, including a 4-year wage increases compounded at 12.6% retroactive to 2021 and $2,500 signing bonus. Did you get that in your job, in your private? Did you get that? How'd you do? Probably not as well, eh? Probably not as well. And then somebody put this out here. Pierre Poilievre, he's not taking advantage of, what was that? The Speaker of the House? What was his name again? I forget his name now. Greg Fergus. $276,000 in expenses in 1 year. 270, and then that other person there where she went off to Egypt there in a flew business class for $15,000. Pierre Poilievre riding just in the economy class there to the Conservative Convention in Calgary. I wonder if those are those new WestJet seats. Looks like they got not much knee room there. They got a little bit of pushback on those cramped WestJet seats there. But
I think, is it Porter Airlines just announced this morning? I think it is anyway. Well, some airline anyway just announced this morning that they're going to start up a Kelowna to Ottawa. Or Ottawa to Kelowna, direct flight.
We can
get maybe Pierre can come and fly to Kelowna, sit down in the studio, and have a nice, friendly conversation with you.
There's a story out there. Mark Carney's bills for his flights are make Pierre look very frugal. And I won't say because I can't remember the exact numbers here, but we're going to skip to this next one. $263,000. No, for the committee coach back. There you go. 260 federal managers in the past 2 years billed taxpayers for more than $250,000 for coaching on how to answer questions at parliamentary committees. Why not just the truth? Isn't disclosure of coaching fees follow complaints from one deputy minister that questioning by MPs was too rough? Isn't the truth rough? They ask you a question, how much did you spend? Why not just answer? Isn't it Canadians you're answering to? You think it's like, so they get coaching on how to skirt answers, and we've seen it. Like, it's not like, it's almost impossible to get answers. The departments and agencies billed a total of $262,000 for these consultants, and tell them how they can provide answers to questions. The largest billings for the coaches was, get ready for this, the largest billings for coaches was by none other than the CBC. Remember when they were asking those questions? 78,000. They got a crying room and everything. This would just make you angry. So the largest billing for coaches was by the CBC at 78,643. Remember, they were trying to get just the gem numbers. And also they try to get them to answer if CBC is biased. Others included 27,000 from the Superintendent of Financial Institution, 38,000 for the Department of Finance, and 19,000 for Public Health. This should be abolished. This should be abolished. Just the truth.
It's obviously not serving its purpose, as we see here. Michelle Rempel-Garner complaining about it, saying that they don't get answers.
Well, no, they don't get answers because they try to skirt the truth. Just the truth. You're answering to this. You're responsible. You're trusted with Canadian taxpayer dollars. And the truth is the easy answer. Just the truth. There was one person in committee there that wanted none of these to be televised because they said that people get angry when they see the answers, and they don't want people to be angry. Stop doing things that make people angry. Stop wasting people's money.
How come we've lost that ability to review performance in all, like anything to do with the government? Because objectively, I think we can say the performance of these people at committees is worse, or at least not improved, when it comes to actually getting the information from them. So how can you justify all this money being spent? It has no observable effect. And how many different areas of government is it precisely the same? More money, more staff, worse results. And that is just, other than Blacklocks, as we say all the bloody time, other than Blacklocks, which everybody should sign up for, basically nobody else even observes it. Nobody even points the finger. Things like standards just collapse, results get worse, cost increases.
Do you think CBC did this?
Are we going to stand up to that?
Do you think CBC did this story that they needed $78,000 of coaching to answer questions in committee? Do you think they did that story? We're going to move ahead because we got 15 minutes. We got 15 minutes to push through quite a few things. I'm going to skip a few things here that we had in the load here. Tesla reported yesterday, and I just wanted to show you where the robot's at right now. So here's the Tesla bot dancing a little bit. It was a good report there from Tesla. It's the most important company probably on this planet other than SpaceX. And Healy's probably one of the most consequential people on this planet. It's going to change the world. And of course, not a lot of the NDPs or Liberals like what he's doing. So let's watch this here. Still the music though. Anyway, you get the idea. That's good enough. So
good move.
And this is God's Side, a Canadian that has put out this piece here. And we won't play the clip here, but CNN about to release breaking news. Elon is singularly attacking the blind community by creating profit-making solution that marginalizes their non-seeing. Basically, he's saying Neuralink is going to allow blind people to see. So he's just making a joke, saying that CNN will figure out a way, or CBC will figure out a way to attack him for going after blind people and giving them sight. And that's really what
I wish. You know how there's like critical race theory and things that you've heard, most people have heard of that. There's also critical I can't remember exactly how it's phrased, but something critical disabled theory or something like that. I mean, you can probably believe that that's true, but I'm telling you, it's really true. And one of the main arguments that they propound is that it is, in fact, ableist. It is prejudiced against disabled people to talk about trying to find a cure to their disability. Because that's, you know, it's why would I need a cure for something that is like defines me or whatever? So Gad Saad is obviously taking the P here, but and he would know this. He'd know this better than me because he studies this kind of thing all the time. Like, this is actually like there are real people who would completely agree with that if they didn't realize that Gad Saad was taking the mickey. And it blows your mind, doesn't it? Here he is curing a profound disability, the inability to see. But he will be attacked in the journals of disability studies. I can guarantee you that.
In some Canadian news, Wabi, I think that's how you pronounce it, Wabi, announced yesterday it closed the largest funding round in Canadian tech history. There you go. She used to work for Uber. This is Raquel Urtasan. I watched the clip here. I watched the segment on Bloomberg this morning. And they're developing robotaxis and self-driving trucks as well. I mean, it's a tough thing to crack. I mean, the Waymo, robotaxi, I think Tesla's robotaxi is, I don't think you can see second place with a telescope, but they just don't have the data that Tesla has, like tens of millions of miles driven, and I use it every day. And they've missed some of their targets as well, but I mean, they closed the big financing, so I mean, a lot of people, you know, like that dislike Elon Musk and that will, you know, gravitate towards this as an alternative. Whether they or not, it's a good use of their money. 750 million USD over $1 billion Canadian, and it appears to be one of the largest funding rounds ever. And they're doing some of their stuff they have safety drivers in some of their semi trucks right now. It's
But sadly, if it succeeds, it'll go to America because they all do, don't they? I mean, not to sound too pessimistic, but they always just got moved to America.
Yeah, I just watched a young lady. She was on Bloomberg, I think, just a couple of weeks ago, talking about how, you know, in Toronto, she's sitting on the floor. They're talking about how, you know, she has this really cool company. I can't even remember what the company was right now. And and then 2 weeks later, she's moved to San Francisco because she said it's a better environment.
It's also access. It's access to everything, access to networks, access to people, access to capital. Like it's impossible almost to stop that brain drain, isn't it?
And then we talked about this a little bit yesterday. An independent journalist highlighted the story, Andy, and Telesat's lenders are taking that satellite operator to court over recent asset transfer. So Telesat, which got, you know, like billions from the Canadian government and also has some close ties to some of the Laurentian elite there, has been accused of moving some of the assets out as their loans come due. And they got some big loans due. Announced on September that it transferred 62% of its equity in Lightspeed unit from Telesat Canada into an indirect sub. So it started trying to shield some assets, and they're denying that they did it. And it says it holds about $1.7 million in debt, U.S. debt, and it's maturing this December. Another $450 million. It sounds like they don't have the money to pay for it, so they're moving some things that can't be claimed. And then obviously, it's not that easy to move stuff around like that. People can trace.
Yeah.
So.
And it's very naughty.
We got to go quick here. We got some BC news here. We got David Eby again.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
And this is a little clip here on Alberta growing faster than BC. Let's listen to David Eby's response.
Is now projecting the province of Alberta will have a higher population than BC by 2037, I believe it is. Are you concerned that it appears that Alberta is now attracting more people than British Columbia?
Well, our population grew by about 300,000 people in just a couple of years. We're grappling with that in terms of schools, hospitals, infrastructure. Population growth is a significant issue for British Columbia. The reason why I believe we're seeing changes in population in British Columbia going forward is our immigration numbers have been reduced dramatically by the federal government. This has very serious consequences for us through our provincial nominee program. It means that we can't recruit the level of health workers we need, the entrepreneurs.
That's good. We can't really hear the audio on it, right? So he's just making excuses. I mean, people are leaving BC to help for Alberta for opportunities. I mean, that's one of the things, right? So,
but he also he got his lines crossed because he started off by saying what he's said many times, what he said to you when you interviewed him as well, which is that BC's like can't handle the population growth. It's too extreme. And he was like saying, we don't, if you remember before the election, he was saying like, we don't have enough schools. Like the whole country, the whole province is swamped with people. And it's like, it's really affecting us. It's really hard. And so he mentioned that the population was growing too fast. And then he finished that answer by saying, so yeah, and the federal government really needs to make sure that it lets us bring in skilled immigrants so that we get, it's like, well, which one is it then? Do you want immigrants? Do you not want immigrants? It's like...
He also said when I interviewed him, he also said that the Liberal immigration policy was daft, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're furious.
Yeah, we're going to play this clip here from EB again on the extortion that's going out of control. And Surrey wants a national emergency there on the crime in Surrey.
One piece, though, David, and I expressed my frustration to the Prime Minister about Bill C-14 being tied up in committees. This is a bill that allows, among other things, reverse bail provisions. It closes loopholes in the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act that allows someone who's been charged for extortion to claim refugee status. We've got a couple of those in BC. People are outraged. Right. They're tied up in committee stage. I just call on the Conservatives and the NDP and the Greens to get these bills through. We need these provisions urgently in community, and it should not be tied up right now. We've just got to get the job done for people in British Columbia, Ontario, Manitoba, and Alberta.
But
made a big mess. Decriminalization, DRIPA.
Yeah.
Revolving door for criminals. We got some international news, though, because, again, we got 7 minutes left here to tie this up here, put a bow on it here.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Donald Trump's on the campaign trail there as they head into, boy, I just had a brain fart there. I lost it. Midterms, as they head into midterms there. And so he's out there campaigning. He has Kevin O'Leary there with him, as well as Nicki Minaj. I'm not sure. Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj. See, I'm a real pop star kind of guy, Nicki Minaj. And she's taking a lot of heat for being Trump's #1 fan, but let's listen to her here.
Well, I don't know what to say, but I will say that I am probably the president's #1 fan. And that's not going to change. And the hate or what people have to say, it does not affect me at all. It actually motivates me to support him more. And it's going to motivate all of us to support him more. We're not going to let them get away with bullying him and, the smear campaigns. It's not going to work, okay? He has a lot of force behind him, and God is protecting him. Amen.
That's good. I don't have a choice between her hairdo and Ursula von der Leyen's. Now, I don't know if we ever get this show to be like the #1 show in Canada, and maybe get it on CBC. We'll replace CBC at some point here because CBC needs to be replaced. And
you can have Ursula's hair, and I can have Nicki Minaj's jacket. Whatever that is. She looks like a cloud.
That's our goal. That's our goal. Our goal is to save Canada and wake people up and have people not live in fear. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Somebody famous once said that. And there's nothing to fear. Let's make a better tomorrow. Let's actually make a better tomorrow. And let's shut out these people that spread fear, misinformation, disinformation. Turn off the CBC. Just push the button. Push the button. Or unfollow them. Follow us. Share us underneath all their posts. There you go.
I don't think they let you comment, so they won't be able to do that.
They don't let you comment. So There you go. We're going to move on to the mayor, Zoran Mandami there in New York, says it's facing a financial crisis at the scale of the Great Recession. Remember all the stuff he promised for free? All the stuff that was going to be free, grocery stores, because it's the Green, Emily Lohan. It's Emily Lohan, right here, the BC Green.
Yeah.
She's promised, she wants government grocery stores. Well, here you go. This is what you're going to get. Here's Mayor Zoran Mandami now saying that, where did the money go?
We are speaking about a fiscal crisis at the scale greater than the Great Recession. And so there will not be one single thing that can answer that crisis. It will require us to pursue every single avenue. That means looking inward into savings and efficiencies. That also means raising taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers and the most profitable corporations. And it means recalibrating the relationship with the state.
Can you hear the jets warming? Hey, can you hear the jets warming up on the tarmac already? They're already leaving. Tons of companies are already leaving. Can you hear them?
Yeah.
So you
they're
promise...
They're just gonna go to New Jersey and places like that, and just over the river, because then you can still just get into New York and do business in Manhattan. It's just, already the richest people in New York live in Connecticut, don't they? Connecticut and New Jersey. That's what I mean. Obviously, that's what you would do. That's what I would do anyway if I was in New York.
He promised everything for nothing. And now he's saying you're going to have to take cuts. We're going to have to make cuts. We're going to have to make cuts. And we're going to have to dig into people's pockets. He doesn't have a plan. This is what people buy this nonsense. They buy this nonsense from the NDP too. They just buy. Like, how many times can you get fooled? How many times can you get fooled by the NDP? How many times can you get fooled by the empty rhetoric? What's being done? Let's look at what's being done. Because I don't know. Like, I mean, even, they talk about all these projects. What's being done? I don't know. I mean, that's our show for today, though. We got 2 minutes to wrap this up. If anybody has any comments, shares, and that. Because, it's really is what's been done. Watch the actions of the people, not their words, because the words are often hollow. And that's the biggest thing, right? They say actions. Like, what's done? Ever since the Liberals now, almost a year now, what can we point to and say Canada's better for this? What can we point to? Anybody? I don't know.
What's better since 2015? Let's think. What's better?
No, I mean, it's even in the last year, they said they're going to fix everything. I mean, we're still pushing this climate stuff. We're still blocking a pipeline. I don't even know if those 12 projects, none of them are advanced that I know of. We've got a lot more bureaucrats making a lot more money. We opened 3 more offices, and people are making $500,000 plus a year. But what's done? What do we have a deal with the Americans? No, probably one of the only nations that don't. Sausage rolls are better.
Yeah.
What's that?
Consumer carbon tax. They're going to be dining out on that one for the years to come.
We have an industrial carbon tax, and we have the clean fuel regulations. We have the packaging tax. We have the highest inflation, food inflation, than G7. And of course, Francois Philippe Champagne say it's a world problem. Well, it's not a world problem. We have our streets look like war zones. And I went to Tokyo. There's no war zone there, but they'll tell you that it's like that everywhere. Doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. And we're back tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's already Friday, and that's the end of that'll be the last day of the month for January already. January 2026 gone. Liberals are running out of time. Liberals are running out of time to get something done. Free the media too. Free the media. Send this out to everybody. Free the media. Repeal the Online News Act. Allow the media to be free and independent. Stop all government funding of media. The media should report to the people. The media's job is to hold power accountable. And that's what some people don't like. They want the power to remain. That's why, when the people come after us, because we go after the Liberals. Liberals are in power. That's who we're supposed to go after. That's how it works. That's what media's job is. Media's job is not to support power. That's what the PR department is for. That's what the PMO's office is for. Sometimes you can go to the PMO's office and CBC, it's the same story. That's odd. You find that odd?
Yeah, the press shouldn't be doing this PR stuff. That's, as you say, the PR people should do that, like the CBC. That's for them to do. But the real press, our job is to hold them to account. And I'm sure that people might be very surprised to learn if the Conservatives ever win majority. Let's imagine Carney calls an election and Tories win a majority. That's who we're going to focus on then. We're not going to keep focusing on the Liberal. Why would we do that?
Don Davies, like, stop spreading fear. Stop spreading misinformation. Nishi, that's who you're hurting people. You're literally hurting people by spreading fear into their hearts and just basically turning them into rabid wolves for your own cheesy little votes. So that's just absolutely this preying on people. That's what it is, preying on people. And then, yeah, somebody says they can't wait for my new hairstyle. Me neither. You know what I mean? So help us get this out to more people. What's that?
Ursula von der Jim.
Our goal was to get to 1 million views for this month. We're going to hit 1.5 million, which is awesome. So next month we're going to push harder and harder, and our sub base is growing every day, which is great. We're really appreciative of everybody that comes on here, especially the regulars that come on every day. We really appreciate it. There's Lara there, Global Traveler, Joe, and we see them all the time. Valiant Goat, all these people that we see on a regular basis. We really do appreciate you coming here. Obviously, Diana, we see almost all the time too, right? I mean, I think most of the people here are very polite with you. Ray are very polite with each other as well, which we really appreciate. And comments, I mean, everybody should be entitled to have a say. Everybody in Canada is an equal, right? And we're trying to get you more the news that is fraud, waste, abuse, corruption, and the news that matters, not narratives. Anyway, thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow morning for Friday's show, the really big show. We got a couple of really exciting segments we're going to launch too as well. We'll tell you about those tomorrow, though. And until then, myself, Jim Check, and Ian Burns, thank you for watching Now Media.